We begin with the name of Allah, the intrinsically compassionate, all-merciful. As part of our Friday series Gems of Surah al-Kahf, we will discuss Ayahs 4 to 6 today. Our topic for this today is what are the grave consequences of saying God begot a son or took a son. Today we will highlight what are the consequences of saying that. We have discussed this before in the previous videos, but just to quickly re-emphasize, the only reason this entire universe is created by Allah is for the creation to realize and say that God is one. That is why in the Quran Allah asked Prophet Muhammad, and through him he asked us to say the same thing, which is, say He is Allah one. This is the number one reason why Allah created the entire universe. He wants the entire mankind to recognize and acknowledge Allah is the only one God. Answering this question correctly and saying this with the full intent of the heart opens the doors of knowledge from Allah. All sources of knowledge that are given to mankind are tied to the saying, say He is Allah one. For us humans, the answer to this critical question can only be answered in one or two ways, either yes or no. There's no other way. When we say yes, we are eligible for the benefits and the knowledge that is required to be successful in this world and the hereafter. For those who say no, they are given the provisions of this world, but the knowledge that is required to be successful in this world and the hereafter is not provided to them until they change their stance towards the foundational statement. This no is a rejection of the Creator behind the creation. This is a rejection of the attributes, and it's the rejection of the being, the Zat, of Allah. Those who reject God are called atheists. There are also those who call themselves as agnostics, meaning they have not decided whether there's God or not. Or they're indifferent about knowing whether there's one God or not. We would put atheist and agnostic in the same category for the sake of this discussion. Modern science tells us that the universe had a definite beginning and a single point of origination from where everything came into being. In cosmology, they call it singularity, which is an infinitely dense point with zero volume. It's a hypothetical point for now, since the current models of science break down when we get to a subsecond after the Big Bang. Regardless, there are clear signals or signs in the universe that point to only one God. For example, all the rules and constants in the universe are the same across the universe. If there were more than one God, then they would have their own rules as well. We don't see a clash of God's creativity in the universe. Everything in the universe is made from the same particles, and all of the particles in individual and collective forms are following the same rules no matter where we go in the universe. The entire light in the universe is ignited from the same source, and that light is transferred from one form to another as it travels and interacts with other particles and objects in the universe. All of these signs give an indication that there must be one creator behind everything in the universe, and everything is connected together cohesively. Atheists' rejection of God is a rejection of the attributes of Allah as the originator, creator, sustainer, owner, etc., and the being of God. This is different from the Christian point of view. It is not an attack on the actual being of God. This just emphasizes that this type of rejection, while not acceptable as well, is different from the people who believe in God and mischaracterize God. When some believers who say God is one but still say God begot a son, then, from Allah's perspective, this is the worst form of attack against the very being of God. This is not a rejection of His attributes, as the atheist's rejection, but a great slander against the divinity and purity of Allah. The very essence of the Zat of Allah. That's why in the Quran Allah says, who can be worse than the one who lies about Allah, or denies His signs? Indeed, the wrongdoers would not be successful. Here in the reference, it refers to any kind of lie about Allah, but in the context of our discussion we are talking about lying of the worst kind about the very being of Allah, so that is very personal to Allah. Degrading God to a human level not only demeans God, but negates the whole purpose for creation. The reason for creating the universe is to recognize the divinity and oneness of God. Saying God begot a son is a personal slander on Allah, and it has serious repercussions. Because we are dealing with Allah, consequences of these utterances are huge, and mankind has been warned about it. With this context in mind, let's look at Ayah number 4 Surah Kahf and 5 and 6 to follow, where Allah asked His Messenger,
وَيُنذِرَ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا.
to warn those who say that God took a son,
ما لهم به من علم ولا لآبائهم كبرت كلمة تخرج من أفواههم إن يقولون إلا كذبا.
They have no knowledge, nor did their forefather have any knowledge about this matter. Grave words come out from their mouths. What they say is nothing but lies. By saying that God begot a son or God took a son, even though they believe in God, but they are grossly mischaracterizing God. They're ignorant. They're speaking out of ignorance. Their forefathers have passed down their ignorance to their children, and the children are merely repeating the same slander that their parents taught them. It is nothing but a lie from Allah's perspective. This is not knowledge that Allah gave them. This is something that they came up with on their own, but this is a slander of the highest proportion of God. A complete fabrication. Therefore, no true beneficial knowledge can be attached to those who repeat this statement. Yes, they will get the knowledge and provisions for this world like everyone else, but the true knowledge about God will not be revealed to them until they change their stance. Slander against God is totally unacceptable. Therefore, we cannot be loose about it. Allah is saying that this type of slander has extremely serious consequences in the universe. The position of this matter in the first 10 ayahs of Surah al-Kahf tell us where the problems in the end times would originate from, so we can make appropriate plans and be on guard. Allah then says,
فَلَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعٌ نَفْسَكَ عَلَىٰ آثَارِهِمْ إِن لَّمْ يُؤْمِنُوا بِهَٰذَا الْحَدِيثِ أَسَفًا.
Then perhaps you will kill yourself through grief over them, O Muhammad, if they don't believe in this message, out of extreme sorrow. Which means that, O Prophet, knowing you, since you are so compassionate about the mankind and care for them, if I tell you all the consequences of this utterance, then you will, out of extreme sadness and worry for them, die. This is like killing yourself by extremely grieving over someone's fate and being very sad about it. Dying due to that condition is like killing oneself. The natural question that comes to mind is then, what are the consequences of this utterance and how should we prepare for it? Slandering God is attacking the sanctity of God. Not wanting to know God is one thing, but mischaracterizing God is a much bigger offense. As a result, one gets disconnected from getting the true knowledge of God that is required for humans to survive in this world and the hereafter. The sanctity of human being is anchored in ethical and moral standards that God has asked us to adhere to. When the sanctity of God is violated, human beings lose their sanctity as a consequence. In these ayahs, Allah is hinting that the problems of the end times will come from the people and regions who have such a belief. Those who say these kinds of utterances will be the ones who will desanctify the earth as well. Once the human being loses the sanctity, then the moral and ethical standards that they stand on become fluid. They change based on the whims and desires of human beings. This over time leads to self-degradation, lack of purpose, lack of direction, lack of accountability, lack of morality, and eventually to self-destruction or mutual destruction. So we must look at this slippery slope to ensure that we don't step on it. The first one is self-degradation, and as we know, the modern view of science is based on the theory of evolution, even though the story of evolution has not been proven but is defended like a religion. The modern man does not want God to get into the gaps of their understanding. The modern humans degrade themselves deliberately by saying that they're a sophisticated animal and evolution has taught them a lot of things over a long period of time to get to this level of intelligence. Given time, a chimpanzee could do the same. Saying monkey to someone was considered a name calling up until recently, but now the most intelligent people in the world think that their ancestors were monkeys. Is this not self-degradation or what? If one takes God out of the equation, then pretty much everybody is on their own. They have to find their own purpose in life. They have a limited time, and they will try the evolutionary trial and error method, and maybe they will find their purpose, and maybe they will sort their lives, but there's no guidance or direction overall. Unfortunately, lack of clear purpose will only lead to more confusion like we haven't seen before. Lack of purpose also means lack of direction, because you don't know whether you pick the right purpose or not, but you drive towards achieving that purpose, but then in the middle you didn't find it interesting, and then you change. Unfortunately, we have a limited time in this world, and recovering from bad mistakes is very costly, and sometimes, when people do make mistakes, they can't recover quickly. So this experimentation without purpose is leading to more confusion and chaos. Alignment to a public cause gives some hope, such as global warming, but if you mix that with transgenderism, then it loses its sanctity. Now humans want to experiment with defining their own moral and ethical values, and we can change them as we go. So we need to be flexible in terms of how we view morality as well. This kind of approach creates more confusion in the minds of young people, especially a young child who is innocent and needs direction instead of making his or her own decisions. Once you have self-degraded and you don't have a higher purpose in life, and your direction can change based on your interest or what society is telling you, or your friends are telling you, then how can you truly have an accountability of what you do? If it doesn't work for you, then blame it on someone. That's why you see drug addiction going up. Suicides and mass shootings are rampant. Everybody is ready to take their inner rage out on someone else. How can you have accountability when everybody is blaming somebody else? The blame game is the name of the game in this world, and that's why the mass shootings are happening, because individuals are not taking responsibility. They are either drugging themselves or taking their inner rage out on other people. It all comes back to what is the inner condition of that person, and whether that person feels good about themselves, whether they have a definite purpose in life and they have clarity in direction. Then that breeds accountability of actions. When there is no accountability, then there is no morality. That's when everything starts to go. The fight against God and the fight against religion is on. Everything goes. You can always recover from your mistakes and just make them quickly. There are no longer any taboos in the society left. Everything goes. You can try everything and nobody's going to tell you to do anything. Lack of morality basically leads to self-destruction, which means that you are lost in paradise and there's no recourse and there's no hope, because there's no God and there's no life hereafter, and so what's the point of living a miserable life, and you can terminate it at your will. Unfortunately, this leads to self-destruction. This is evident in the society as suicide rates are going up and mass shootings are on the rise. These are all the signs of a very sick society which has no guardrails and is in deep trouble. So when you take this behavior at the national level, because the individual and social level generate leaders who run the nations, they are also confused. They have also lost the moral compass, and they themselves are on the path to self-destruction. In fact, they want to destroy the entire world. They have come up with a strategy called mutually assured destruction, which means having enough nuclear bombs to obliterate your enemy and half of the world. The reality is that the enemy will not send one bomb, it will send thousands of them right away. This is the world that we're living in. This is the knowledge that has advanced to this point without the moral and ethical bounds. It's basically become rampant and it's out of control, and it's leading us to the destruction of the human species, and everybody seems to be living under the circumstances as normal. How demented one can get when we say that the only way to keep the world peace is through mutually assured destruction of the world through nuclear detonations, i.e. nuclear-assisted suicide. That's why Allah told us in Surah al-Kahf that these utterances have implications on messing up the internal order of the human being, messing up the sanctity of the human being, the character of human beings. Once the character of human beings is messed up, it will mess up the entire world. So the lessons learned from Surah al-Kahf is that there will be challenges and they have to be tackled, but the main thing is to remain anchored in the ethical and moral values of Islam to protect the sanctity of the human being inside us. Also, knowing and avoiding those individuals or organizations who have lost their moral compass, and having a plan B ready if the living environment becomes too difficult to hold on to Islamic values. May Allah protect us from all kinds of evil and give us the strength and perseverance to hold on to our ethical and moral values of Islam. Ameen. Thanks for watching the video, and don't forget to subscribe, share, comment, and like the videos, and if you want to be notified for future videos, then please hit the notification button as well. Till next time, inshallah.